Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, July 10th, 2023 version of the Kubernetes Public Steering Committee meeting. My name is Christoph Blecker. I'm going to serve as your host. A reminder that these steering committee meetings are recorded, will be posted to YouTube, as well as we abide by the CNCF and Kubernetes Code of Conduct. Please be excellent to each other. If you need any refreshers on that, go check out the code of conduct in the community repo. Okay. Let's take a look at our agenda. Bob, you have a couple of items.
Yep. The first thing, I opened the PR couple weeks ago about updating the org membership requirements. This is mostly two things: clarifying, or not a couple weeks ago, like last week, clarifying, around like right now it's like one merge PR is technically a requirement, but there's a big difference between like a KEP and a little tiny docs fix. So mostly just emphasizing that needs an ongoing commitment, like to be promoted to an org member. And then the second was cutting down our like inactive member policy from 18 months to 12 months, just because we have a lot of inactive members right now. From the like report that I think Nabrun ran, we have like 600 people that will be removed, which is a hefty chunk. And frankly, if you have no interaction with GitHub in a year, I think it's safe to remove you from the org. We have acts from several of the members, just need final acts from a few others.
Christoph and I just tapped in.
Any other comments from anyone on this?
I think it's great. Looks pretty straightforward, and makes sense with regards to GitHub interaction.
Cool.
I have one question. Does it check the owners files? Like if person had no activity and still is in owner file, will be automatically removed?
They will not automatically be removed. That's usually a manual cleanup that's done by the GitHub admins. There is some tooling that DIM's built that at least makes that a bit easier. But it's still opening up a flurry of sort of PRs everywhere.
A non-org member should also flag as get the PR or issue targeted as a invalid owner's file if they're still in an owner's file.
Yeah. They won't get
if that PR goes and updates that owner's file.
Exactly.
The next time that somebody goes and touches that owner's file, it'll say, hey, these are people who are in the owner's file but aren't part of the org.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the meantime, it won't assign it to them if they aren't actually a part of the org and still listed there. So there's at least some protections there.
Great. If there's no other comments on this one, we will keep it moving.
The next is the LTS charter review. It's gone back and forth quite a few times at this point, and has some sign off and looking for additional reviews before it can be merged.
I'll take that since that kind of crosses over in multiple of my hats.
Yeah, I'll add that to my list to review today as well. That one will take a little bit longer than 30 seconds in an LGTM.
Yeah.
Is there any other comments on this one? I know some folks are here who are involved in that working group.
Hi. So Jeremy was not able to make this call today, but Rita and I are here, and I just want to say I'm super excited about this because it's so important and the discussion that Rita can speak to how the discussion went at KubeCon, but at the Contributor Summit, the discussion was very active, very interested, and I think people are pretty excited about this. Rita?
Yeah, just second that, and also want to make sure, if y'all have any concerns or whatnot, let's definitely talk about it.
Great. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, it looks like the three outstanding reviews there are from myself, Stephen, and Ben. So we can get that looked at, and if everything looks in order, get it merged in.
Awesome. Thank
Great.
you.
Moving along. Back to you, Bob.
The next thing is the sort of a whip PR of proposing SIG etcd. The chart and all that isn't, nothing in it is in a good state, but they're essentially looking for an ACK from steering at this point to okay, etcd is cool with this, Kubernetes steering is good with this. Now let's actually move forward and figure out, all the details. They would also like us to sort of enumerate all the sort of expectations regarding, yes, they're going to have to use EasyCLA. Yes, their org is going to be managed by Kubernetes, and so just get all of those little details ironed out.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing for them is just an official ACK that, yes, we're okay with this idea.
Okay. Has anybody from steering reviewed this yet and can give a kind of an initial thought on it? Or it doesn't look like there's much in here other than just establishing a blank SIG with the boilerplate.
They didn't want to essentially do all that until there was, an official ACK from us that we're okay with the idea.
And it kind of the LTS, it's a chicken and an egg. You got to understand a little bit of the scoping, and just straight boilerplate makes it hard. I want to see where the repo is going to be, how it's going to be consumable by others, how we make sure it doesn't.
They want some of those details from us. So
mostly
sorry.
Here's why it can't come from us. They have stakeholders and users beyond Kubernetes. They need to present a plan that works for all of their stakeholders, not just us. We could declare how we want it to be for us, but that's wrong.
Well, it's mostly we also have to outline what are the minimum requirements for you to be a Kubernetes project of some kind. Again, I'll go back to EasyCLA and, us taking ownership of the etcd org, or them migrating their projects in and things like that.
So a thought. Instead of maybe us enumerating an entire list of all the things they need to do, is there anything, maybe we pose the question back to them, is there anything that you want to do that would be outside of our normal documented processes for a SIG? Because we've already got 35, 36 of them active right now. So we've got plenty of documentation on what a SIG is supposed to do, what they're supposed to adhere to. If they, based on the fact that they have an already established GitHub org, already established community, all that kind of stuff, if they're looking for exceptions to what our norms would be because they've already been doing a thing, then that can and should be something that maybe we'll review at that time, or pull in others to review, like the GitHub admin team, or SIG testing, or the Kate's infra, or something like that.
I think we need to point that out, though, and maybe even point to some of the things that we think might look like it. The GitHub org is an obvious, start that conversation, because normally we'd be expecting SIGs to be starting new projects under Kubernetes SIGs or donating them there, but that maybe doesn't make sense here. I think if we nudge them in the direction of outline which exceptions you want and suggest a few starting points, we can probably get something.
For now, just like the big thing they want is just like, are we as the Kubernetes project okay with potentially, accepting them as a new entity?
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think let me throw it out to steering as a whole. Does anybody have any objections in concept to doing this?
I think we have a lot. I think we have a lot of specifics to work out if it goes forward, but like conceptually, I think this is a good idea.
Yeah, what I would want to see is, I think there have been documents and lots of conversations over the last few months. What it would be great to see is an actual charter for SIG etcd. There's lots of TBDs here, so I think holistically, what they are trying to accomplish in the context of a SIG would be useful.
And wearing my SRC hat, we've been wanting this for a while. This is definitely a welcome change. But having said that, I think in our last SRC call, we did actually talk about what constitutes as like requirements for SIGs and sub projects, meaning over time, if there aren't enough maintainers where they can meet the SLO for, say, CVE things, right? Do they graduate out of a sub project or a SIG? Don't know, but that's one of the things that I think could come up more in the future.
I think it would be great to see something along that lines integrated into, like, say, governance docs, just so we have a baseline to constantly point back to if the SRC has recommendations there.
Yeah, TBD, yeah. But again, just because, Chris, you asked, I think this is +1, at least for now.
Okay, great. Who's having that conversation with the SIG etcd folks? Are you having that conversation, Bob, right now? You are muted.
Sorry.
Yeah, your volume's really
physical
low.
mute button
Yeah.
versus virtual mute button. Yeah, I've been having that conversation with them on and off. Like, I chimed in on the original issue that they opened up, defining actually some of the requirements that would be coming over to here. That's why they reached out to me as like, is this something we can actually start? And that's kind of like, okay, need to have at least the approval of the concept from steering officially.
Well, I think at this point we can record that, like, in concept, in theory, steering is on board with this. We need to dive into specifics. Are you okay handling that, Bob? Do you have the cycles to continue maintaining that conversation? Do you need some help there?
I can continue that conversation. I'll act on the issue that, like, we're good with it in concept, need to sort out remaining details.
And just given that, like, forecasting, do we want to consider, like, Bob, are you going to be like, I would look at you as the de facto liaison from steering if this was to become a thing. So do we need to shift your workload liaison wise, or think about that moving forward?
Maybe eventually, but like probably by the time, like, timeline of them really actually becoming a thing, we'll also have the election and all the other things. Like, we'll be doing a big shuffle anyway.
Great. With that, we can move on. Bob, it looks like your last item on the agenda. Back to you.
Yep. The maintainer sessions are due Sunday. If we want to have one, we need to get something in.
How did last time go?
Tim filled in for me.
Tim, how did it go? Did that work?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the session was in line with our previous ones. I still have this kind of ongoing question of whether we should continue to propose this or whether we're aging or maturing out past where it makes sense relative to tight space in the program to be trying to angle for a slot versus ceding that space to others. But yeah, that's maybe orthogonal.
Do we have other space though? Like, I mean, isn't there space already set aside for the maintainer track? Small space at that.
So yeah, so I would say that, you know, I think when we had, you know, instantiated the 101 track, it was because the conceptually, like, 101 is always going to matter. And I think we kind of fall under the, like, steering plans to exist for the future, right? And they're, you know, for the 58% of, or whatever the number is, of new attendees for KubeCon, I think this is a relevant session to have.
Yeah, because there's three kind of opportunities that steering has if we want to put messages out there. The first being at the Contributor Summit. We've been having, and it's been highly requested to continue to have an AMA session at Contributor Summit. People find that valuable, but that's more kind of an internal thing as far as health of the project goes. We've had this maintainer track spot where we've done an AMA or some kind of session to educate people on who steering is and what we do. And then the third one is the video updates from the Kubernetes project that can go into that video recording that'll get played on the keynote stage one of the days of KubeCon. So those are the three opportunities. If all of them are helpful, we can do all three. If some of them aren't helpful or aren't proving things, then we can drop them. But at least at this point, to me, like, I've seen benefit from holding the sessions. That's at least my rank. But I wasn't able to attend the last one.
I would say all three have value. Sorry, go for it.
I should have been more clear that I think the kind of the main KubeCon program area versus the videos or the Contributor Summit, like a room in the program, we're consistently getting very, very few people there. I think that there's a value proposition, but I don't know that we're realizing it.
I think all the three formats have their own benefits. With the session at KubeCon, I believe, like, we could field, like, the audience could field, like, good questions to us, and that is a broader audience who may not be able to, like, join the Contributor Summit. And the keynote video update gives a view of what we are doing on priority, but then they don't get to ask us any questions at that stage, and they can come to our session basically to ask questions. So I feel like we should still submit.
It's all three, yeah.
I am +1 on all three. The big thing that keeps coming up, you know, again and again, is a lot of people, frankly, have no idea what we do, or it gets confused with like the TOC, or, you know, essentially some of the stuff that, like, SIG-Arch winds up covering. I'm not sure, you know, what else we could potentially do to, like, sort of market the session better, to try and potentially get better attendance.
So Tim had mentioned, you know, value prop, and I think for us as a group, we need to define what that is, right, and walk backwards from that. If we don't have that walking in, we're kind of going to be like, all right, here's the session, here's the usual, you know, thing, right? If there's some goal that we're trying to achieve, you know, for that KubeCon, then that is what we walk back from. But we should state that value prop before we.
I mean, I think it's the one chance people have to come find us that isn't the Contributor Summit, right? That isn't restricted to existing contributors.
Yeah,
I think we can. I think that's valuable. Maybe we do need to do more to make sure that people know about it or whatever, but I think doing something that enables that is worthwhile, and the maintainer track slot seems like the main opportunity to do something like that.
Tim?
I would note this is a public meeting. We do have other opportunities to find us. Now, in person, a group of us, different story. But there's a group of us here almost in person. Like the requirement for the in-person thing is, I don't know that that's a compelling reason.
I think they have different availability. Like if you're at work right now because you need to be doing your day job and you can't attend these meetings, that is a different kind of not being able to attend. Like they both have that problem. Like the Zoom call isn't actually accessible to everyone either. But if your work is sending you to the conference and set aside that time, you're at the conference, you have the time, you can drop by our session. I mean, they're both not going to be able to reach everyone. But to me, that's a reason to do like a third thing.
As many as we can.
And not to drop that one.
We can submit, sort of our generic one and just kind of like, update what it will be later. I do think we should try and figure that out sooner rather than later, though.
Yeah, but that is a good point, too. I think we should make sure that I think there's enough interest across us that we should make sure that we reserve the slot, even if we don't quite have it worked out yet. I know some of us will also be looking at the slots for some of the other SIGs and things. So,
yeah, there are restrictions on the maintainer slots. If you're going to be speaking for like another project or like another SIG.
That's good to know. So, I mean, we'll have to make sure that we don't have any conflicts there. Is everyone planning to go?
I plan to be there.
I mean,
I'll be there as well.
I don't know if work will send me, but I'm planning to go.
One other thing, this will be after our election. So there will be theoretically, a bunch of new people potentially in here.
I haven't looked at the CFP this time, but would we be needing to have this be a single speaker presentation for diversity reasons with our current membership?
We can have
still do it too.
2 people with our current membership. Either way, I still think it's good that we essentially reserve the slot. And
yeah, I mean, we may even need to revisit and talk with the newly elected members when it gets time for that.
Yeah. Yeah, there will at least be one new person because I'm terming out. But could be up to 4 new people whose term ends this year. Okay. Do we have a volunteer for somebody who wants to put in the placeholder?
I'll do it.
I can also do it.
I'm one of the people that will carry over to next year.
I can do it, Bob.
Yeah, we can just have the folks that are definitely carrying over.
Great. Okay. So with that, we have reached the end of our pre-populated agenda. Are there any walk-on items? Anything anybody wants to bring up or discuss?
I just wanted to thank the steering committee for taking a look again at that attempt to form that working group. I know it's been a long haul, but I think what I heard, I want to make sure I understand it, is we do have a commitment to at least review from the remaining members of steering. Correct. We're going to consider. Right. Fantastic.
One of the, I have an item. Did we finish up on the annual reports?
There's still some outstanding ones.
I know I have at least one outstanding one that I've been just like periodically following up with and not getting anything. I don't really know what to do about that.
My suggestion would be we have our private meeting next week, which actually, let me look. Do we have all 7 of us here today? I think we do.
Yes.
Nice. I think it's been a little while since we've had all 7 in the room at the same time. What I suggest, first off, is everybody here from steering planning to attend our private meeting next week?
Yes.
I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. So what I'd suggest, why don't we put annual reports as the first item next week for us to go over, so that everybody has, you now have 5 business days to go through and take a look at the current status of your SIGs and working groups and all that kind of stuff. Ping and poke people as you can this week, and then we can go through everything that's outstanding next week on as the first thing on our agenda. Does that work for folks?
Yep.
Yes. Sounds good.
Also, something that I want to point out, like some of the PRs may have been approved without a review from us. We may want to look at all of the closed issues as well, like to see if they have had a reviewed annual report from us. The reason I bring this up is I saw last year that we did a consolidated report for CNCF. What's the timeline for that?
Frankly, it's not going to happen.
Okay.
Like,
is there a reason we're not doing this year?
If anyone else has the bandwidth to go through every report and do that big 40-page thing, go for it.
What's the value add over the individual reports?
It's something that the CNCF will actually push out.
I mean, so if I just like append them together,
it's not that easy.
Because if we're just talking the distribution mechanism, otherwise I would just point people to, like, we have our own report. Here's the report.
I see the value as for the readership, the really, really broad set of potentially interested technically in coupling towards the project. This is a really hard project to approach and comprehend what's going on. So having something that's curated to be more understandable of what's going on in aggregate versus just a set of SIG silos, I think that's a really important editorial for our user base. And that's where it gets tricky, trying to harmonize and maybe cut certain things out, or say, oh, we don't really have enough actionable information on this once we think of it in the bigger context. Like it's hard.
Bridget?
Yeah, to Tim's point, we had 2 relatively new to Kubernetes community members approach SIG cloud providers Slack channel lately and say, where do we jump in? And we thought, oh dear, like there are places you should jump in. Probably trying to work on a cloud provider is not the easiest or best first good issue. And so Michael and I ended up going and finding some good first issues from KK and a few other repos, a few other SIG repos. But it's like, I know, Contribex, et cetera, puts a lot of energy into this, but I kind of wonder if, as Tim's pointing out, one of the features in there could be, and if you're new, here's a carefully signposted, go here, start here.
I think when we've done those in the past, they tend to get snapped up pretty quick by a drive-by. And like, if we only published it once a year, that I mean, it would be useless in a few days.
Oh, I meant like the tag, like be like, you will always find the most current thing that it gets you started here, and then have it actually be true.
Well, officially, those are good first issue labeled issues in the org. In practice, we have some consistency problems, but I don't think the annual report is going to solve that.
So one other benefit that I've seen of the consolidated report is having that report in public helps getting buy-in for people who want to contribute to upstream and where we need help. And I got like a few managers like agreed for their reports to contribute upstream in the critical areas that we need help with. So having that report, even for last year, would help in this.
But you wouldn't be able to do that using the individual annual reports? I mean, those are public and they are official.
tried doing that, did not work much, to be very frank.
Okay.
Yeah, you do raise a good point though. I agree that those are also public.
I don't want steering to keep doing like lots of extra work that isn't panning out. There's so many other things that we could be following up on. I didn't even recall that we had a consolidated report. I just looked through the SIG reports.
Yeah. It went out to the like CNCF end user list. It was published on their website. The big thing is that it took weeks of time to do.
Right, and that's what I'm concerned about, because we've had other things where we've barely managed to get to all of them, and it sounds like you spent a lot of time on it. It does sound like there's some value prop though.
Can we take help from SIGDocs and Contribex marketing?
We have in the past as well. SIGDocs did. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Several people from SIGDocs did help review and contributed even like some content to the last report. I don't mean to be so negative, but like realistically, just on the time commitment and the availability of the current people on steering, like myself included, that it just like unless we significantly change the style of it, it's just not going to happen.
I mean, would it work to like write a just like brief message and link out to the reports? Do we actually need to summarize all of them? I also worry about the editorial voice in that and like what we exclude. Like we asked the SIGs to write this up. If we're gonna pass it along and like skip stuff, that doesn't seem great.
That's actually, at least in my past experience, Ben, that's the benefit of an like this is the bit of editorial view on it, where it's like you could anybody could go and read 36 individual SIG reports to identify what the areas of need in the project are. But it's way easier and simpler to have one report that highlights, hey, these are the areas where we actually need things. And like, here's the significant areas of need, and here's the significant wins of the project. Because there's going to be plenty of stuff that's like, the project is operating the way it should. There's movement, there's new features, there's all sorts of good things happening. But the having a one-page, like, one
executive summary kind of,
is helpful, because then you can go like, here's the big wins for the project and here's the big areas of need in a much more kind of condensed way than going and reading 36 individual reports.
Yeah, if I'm a new contributor trying to get stuck in, I'm probably going to care about two things: that executive summary consolidated report, and then reports for any areas that I'm specifically interested in. Right. I would not want to read all of them.
I buy that angle more. I don't think we should be trying to write it for new contributors. I mean, that's good first issue, and we should curate that.
So I'm going to make a suggestion. Let's see how people feel about this. As homework for next week, in addition to poking your other folks, I think it'd be helpful if folks take a look at our previous annual report, like the annual consolidated one that was linked from last year, if you have not already. And because then we can, if based on last year's report, we can then look at it and figure out, okay, how much of this document is an alignment with a value proposition, like we see value in doing these things. Are there places or things that we can get streamlined so that it's not as much of a burden for us to generate? And understanding, like, I think reading the last consolidated annual report will also give people a sense of like the time commitment that is required in order to compile it, because that's the other question that we'll have to look at next week is like, if we are going to do a consolidated report, will people have the time and be able to commit the time to collaborating to generate that?
Fair. Speaking of, maybe I should put it on the agenda for next week. I still think the annual report is has a fair bit of busy work in it. We should cut back. I think that's part of why we're struggling to get people to do it. It's like writing a KEP. It's imposing. There's a huge template, and there's some pretty high time commitment things for people to do that it doesn't seem like they should need to do, like collecting a list of members or something.
We have got automation for that now. That is pre-populated.
But if that's the case, then why even have them do it? Like, why not just remove it and track it orthogonally?
That we can discuss for next year, actually. This is a great point.
I think some of these things don't belong in the report.
Yeah. Even the list of KEPs are like right now generated automatically. So we have to think like,
I think if I'm looking at this as a SIG lead and looking at what I need to do, if there's anything that you can just automate away for me, I would split it into like a separate file or something, so that I'm just looking at, okay, I need to answer these couple questions, and this is more manageable. Right now, it's a lot in that document.
We also found here's some automation that wasn't working the way that the automation was intended to work. And people found it by reviewing what we generated for them and to be like, oh, actually, that's not correct. Let me fix this. So having a human eye on that and then be able to, for posterity, record might have some value. Like definitely a good topic for us to discuss, but there are some reasons why we might still want to do the way we're doing it, but we can...
that makes sense. I'll put an item for next time. I would say that psychologically, at least to me, I would split those into like make it a folder, put in another file or something, so that when I'm looking at the document I need to fill out, this is what I need to go generate, and it's a smaller file. We've even talked about this with enhancements. It's a similar problem. Like, if you're doing some trivial like process thing in the project and you just want to drive consensus, you have like the entire PRR thing to look at, and even just saying not applicable to all of it takes a while, and that causes like activation energy issues for people. You open up that file and you're like, nope, there's no way I'm doing another KEP. I think we have a similar problem with annual reports. People look at it and they're like, I don't have time for this, even though the things that we're really asking, like, where is your SIG struggling, should not take you that long to write down a few things.
Tim?
I feel like we've tried to optimize for the starting point of, oh, it's hard when you have a blank page. What should I write? Now, sure, I agree with you, Ben. As a lead, you should know your current pain points, your current successes, but also maybe you've started to forget. And the tools then became a way of reminding somebody of, here are some things. But at the worst case, that ends up just being, hey, if you're interested in Kubernetes, here's the folder where all of the KEPs are. Go read them. The summarizing action here is 100% hard, but it's necessary for the audience I think we're trying to reach.
But in our current state, we have SIGs just not turning in anything. So I think that it would be better to encourage, like, first step, give us your like pain points and where things are going well. Tell us about the state of it. And then, the next tier is like, can you review our like list of KEPs and like editorialize that? And if you don't get to that, like that, to me, at least, that's less of a problem than if you don't give us anything and we're not even hearing from you about like where your pain points are or what's going well. I have a major SIG that still hasn't written anything. And I would really like to know how that SIG is doing. And I think part of the problem is that, they look at it and they're just like, I don't have time for this. So even if we want them to do all of it, break it up and prioritize it and say, well, we'd really at least like to hear this part or something.
I think we should bring this up in the Chairs and TL meeting sometime to ask for review of the annual report, to ask people what they feel about it. I feel like we have a lot of strong opinions here right now, and we should really review them. And if some things in the annual report are not working, we should review and see how we can make it better. I think there were some discussions a couple of months back on the annual reports when we shipped them out for people to fill in. Those are also some action items that we need to take care of before rolling out next year.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's sort of a multi-purpose document, right? Like one of the purposes is informing people and giving SIGs a chance to get that message out, but it's also to an extent for us to have some idea, you know, how's the project going, where do we need to be doing things, and that's the one that really concerns me, because SIGs have other ways that they can do outreach, you know, like we talked about good first issue or things like that. But the feedback mechanism, getting it back to steering, you know, I think the annual reports is one of the few things we have where we actually take a look at what's up with the SIGs. And when we're not getting anything at all, that seems pretty bad, and we should fix that. So some of the groups I'm working with, like, they're like work groups, and the answer is it's time to spin them down. But for things that you can't eat, where that's not really a reasonable answer, I think we have to fix the report process, or we need some other answer. I don't know what that is. But I'm going to add this to next week's agenda.
Okay, great. Any last comments on that item? Okay, and with that, we'll go back to last call. Any other items that we want to bring up or talk about today? Seeing nothing, I think that wraps it up for today. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we'll see everybody around soon.
Thank you. Later.
Cheers, all.
See you.